Hello, boys and girls and babes. Welcome back to the Janaea Talks Caps podcast. As always, thank you all so much for tuning in today. And we are now 6 games in to the Capitals season. We have a lot to cover today, not only with the Caps, but around the rest of the league as well. For the Caps part, they are playing very well to begin the season, especially considering that they got, a really short training camp and no preseason games with a brand new head coach. So, considering everything, they've adjusted really quickly here to Peter Laviolette, and they're playing really well. Like I said, considering everything, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but especially when you consider everything that they've faced so far with the COVID situation and other injuries as well. Like I said, we'll get to all that in just a bit here. But yeah, so far they've already jumped out to first place in the East Division with 9 of a possible 12 points in the standings so far. They still have not lost in regulation, and they're one of only 4 teams in the league right now who have not yet lost in regulation. So 2 of those teams as well, the Dallas Stars and the Florida Panthers, they've only played 2 games so far because of postponements. So the Caps, with a 3-0-3 record, are looking really good. 2 of those extra time losses came via the shootout as well, so that's even less of a loss than an overtime loss would be. Shootouts, of course, are a little bit of a gimmick, but like I said, it was a short training camp, no preseason games for the Caps with new head coach Peter Laviolette. So though they have looked and been impressive under him so far, you can really only expect that they will get even better as the season moves along here. So it typically takes teams a good few months before they are fully used to a new coach, used to a new system, and before they fully know what they're doing out there with respect to the system. So I fully expect things to only go up even more from here as the Caps get more and more comfortable under new head coach Peter Laviolette. And there has been a ton of adversity for the Caps already in this young season. As you have probably heard by now, Alex Ovechkin, Evgeny Kuznetsov, Dmitry Orlov, and Ilya Samsonov are all in COVID protocol. And they have missed and will miss at least 4 games. Tom Wilson is also out with a lower body injury. But for his part, he's considered day-to-day, and he did skate today, so he could return soon. Although I think the Caps are looking to be cautious with that one. There's a lot of hockey left to be played, obviously, this season, so probably better to be on the safe side with him, especially with the Caps piling up points already, even with all of these absences. So, but yeah, so those are not small names for the Caps to be missing. Obviously, that's your captain, your perennial leading goal scorer, and the perennial leading goal scorer of the entire league as well in Ovechkin. Probably one of the most irreplaceable players to ever play the game, truthfully. So, and then of course with Kuznetsov and Wilson also out, that's now your entire top line that you're missing. You're also missing a top pairing defenseman in Orlov, as well as your number 1 goaltender in Samsonov. So these are not small pieces that we're talking about here. And yet, the Caps have kept on scoring, kept on winning, and kept on piling up points in the standings, like I mentioned, to the tune of first place in the East Division. So they are currently 4th in the league in scoring, even missing all of these big guns. So it's been impressive. Even missing all of those star players, though, it's not as if the Caps are without star power still in their lineup at the moment. They have a lot of star players to begin with, obviously. So even when a handful of them are out of the lineup, they do still have a lot left to work with. Nicklas Backstrom, for example, let's look at it individually. Backstrom, he's off to a hell of a start to the season after signing a shiny new 5-year contract extension with the only NHL team he has ever played for. He's top 10 in the league in scoring with 4 goals and 7 points in 6 games so far. Young Jakub Vrana, rising star for the Caps. He's already got 3 goals and 6 points in 6 games. The ever reliable TJ Oshie, he's got 6 points in 6 games as well. Defenseman John Carlson, he's got 5 points already in 6 games. Tom Wilson, he was lighting it up with 3 goals and 6 points in 5 games before he got injured. So there's still obviously a lot of firepower on this team, even with Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, Orlov, etc. Being out of the lineup. So Ovechkin as well, he was having a strong start to the season before landing in COVID protocol with 5 points in 4 games. So I expect big things from him when he's able to come back, which will likely be this coming Saturday against the Boston Bruins. But the depth in the bottom half of the lineup for the Caps is what's impressed me the most so far. Lars Eller, he's always amazing. I don't know who the hell this Richard Panik is that we've been seeing so far this season, but I am totally here for it, and I hope he sticks around. Seriously, did anyone catch Panik laying Tom Wilson-like hits in Sunday's game against the Sabres? Holy shit, man. Like I said, I'm here for it. He's been playing great. Really going back to the end of last season, he obviously, he dealt with an injury early on in his Caps tenure, and he missed some time with it. But pretty much ever since he came back from that injury, he's just been getting better and better and better. So please let that continue. We'll keep our fingers crossed, as that is great for our depth overall as a team. I've loved what I've seen from Daniel Sprong so far. He's definitely, he's definitely got high upside. Connor McMichael had a strong NHL debut on Sunday. And I've been saying ever since the Caps signed Nick Dowd and Garnet Hathaway that I would die for our fourth line. They are amazing. They've always been amazing, but it's on display even more now with increased ice time with so many big names out of the lineup. You take what our fourth line did in these last 2 games against the Sabres, for example. Laviolette, he clearly has a ton of trust in them. And that trust is well earned by them, by the way, because like I said, they've been playing amazing hockey. Even with the last change in these last 2 games, with them being our first 2 home games of the season, Laviolette still chose, even with the last change, he still chose to match our fourth line up against the Sabres top line of Taylor Hall, Jack Eichel, and Sam Reinhart. So they played almost every shift against the Hall, Eichel, Reinhart trio. And guess what? Our fourth line handily won that head-to-head battle, not only keeping Hall, Eichel, and Reinhart off of the score sheet in both games, but Nick Dowd also scored a goal in Friday's win. And on Sunday, the Hagelin-Dowd-Hathaway trio handed the Hall, Eichel, Reinhart trio another minus, that being on Justin Schultz's first goal as a Capital. It happened because if you watch the game, Garnet Hathaway, right, he lays a huge hit on Taylor Hall, and that led directly to Hall turning the puck over to Schultz, hence Schultz's unassisted goal. But really, if you ask me, it was assisted by Hathaway, being an absolute monster on the forecheck as per usual. So yeah, I love our fourth line. It was actually getting to the point during that game, the Sabres coaching staff, they were actively trying to get their top line away from the Capitals' fourth line. The Sabres coaching staff, they had seen enough after 4 games now against these Capitals. So they were really trying to get their top line away from the Capitals' fourth line as they were caught multiple times trying to make a late change to get away from that matchup. The Caps, like I said, in these last 2 games, they were playing their first 2 home games of the season, so they did have the last change. So the Sabres, they were caught trying to make the late change. They were sent back to the bench. But Jack Eichel, he hasn't scored a goal yet this season, largely due to the fact that he's had to play 4 games already against that Caps fourth line. So he could be seen during Sunday's game smashing his stick over the Sabres bench, visibly frustrated. So you love to see it if you're a Caps fan. So here's to our fourth line, causing many more of the opposition's top players to break their sticks in frustration this season. Love to see it, like I said. So to sum up, the Caps are deep. They're a deep team. They made great offseason moves. They're deep up front. They're deep on the back end where they can insert names like Jonas Siegenthaler and Trevor Van Riemsdyk when guys are out of the lineup, either due to COVID or injury or whatever the reason may be. Siegenthaler, for example, he was a regular player for the Caps last season. He was the team's best penalty killer, and he even spent some time as John Carlson's defense partner. So he is now a healthy scratch. And that's not because he's not still a very good player. And it's not because Laviolette isn't making the right lineup decisions. It's simply because this team is now so ridiculously deep that they have the luxury of having guys who are easily full-time NHL players now waiting in the wings as healthy scratches. Van Riemsdyk, too, like, he's a hell of a hockey player. He's going to be a healthy scratch on this team on most nights. Youngster Martin Feravari as well. Easily a full-time player on most NHL clubs, but he is 9th now on this Washington Capitals depth chart on the blue line. So this is a great thing anytime, having this much depth, but it's especially a great thing during a COVID season where teams are playing a compressed schedule with a ton of back-to-back games. There's bound to be a lot more injuries than usual. And then you factor in people missing games due to COVID protocol as well. So guys are going to miss games this season around the league. And having that depth is going to be even more important than it's ever been. So the Caps are very well set up in that department. And they are also very well set up with depth in goal as well, which has become even more apparent as rookie Vitek Vanecek gets more starts with number one goalie Ilya Samsonov out due to COVID. So Vanecek, he's been extremely impressive thus far, going 2-0-2 with a .912 save percentage in his first 4 NHL games of his young career. He made a whopping 45 saves during Sunday's game against the Sabres, including several sparklers. The 3 goals that beat him all came via the Sabres power play, so he did not give up a goal at even strength. In Friday's win against Buffalo as well, he made several big saves again. It's becoming a bit of a theme for him, and he did stop all 4 Sabres attempts in the shootout as well. So he earned that win for sure, and he is definitely proving that, he more than just belongs in the NHL. And it's coming at a great time for the Caps with, like I said, number one goalie Ilya Samsonov out due to COVID. There's no word yet on if Samsonov will miss more than just the 4 games required during the initial quarantine period. As Samsonov is the one Capitals player who we know has actually tested positive for the virus. Ovechkin and Orlov apparently have the antibodies. So it's possible that Samsonov could be out longer than the others, but Vanecek's play is making it so that we miss Samsonov a little bit less. So the Caps also have veteran Craig Anderson available to play during Samsonov's absence. Anderson, he's been called up from the taxi squad, so that's another good option as well, and just a veteran guy to lean on as well. Obviously, Vanecek being a young guy and a rookie, it's good to have that veteran presence around as well. But just one more note on Vanecek as well, as a goalie myself, his rebound control was superb during that Sunday game. Pucks were just sticking to him like Velcro. He was literally like a vacuum out there. And that's just yet another sign of a goalie who is calm, who is confident in what he's doing out there. And really a guy who's playing well beyond his years and his experience level. So as much as I like Samsonov, really Samsonov, like, he hasn't looked very good so far this season, albeit in so far limited action, obviously. But he hasn't looked anywhere near at the level that he was at last season. And due to the fact that he just hasn't played very many games yet this season, there's really no way of knowing yet if his underwhelming play is just simply due to rust, or if it's possibly something more serious, such as him, not having healed properly from the back and neck injuries he sustained as a result of that ATV accident over the summer. So hopefully it's nothing that serious. Hopefully it's just rust and it will wear off. He is a great goalie and a very capable NHL starter when he is playing up to his capabilities. So he's very talented. And, I'm a believer in Samsonov, but regardless, I'm going to come out with a steaming hot take here, and that is that I believe that come season's end, it will be Vitek Vanecek who has made more starts for the Caps this season. I think he's going to get more starts than Samsonov. I think he's going to play well, and the Caps are going to keep winning. And so as long as he's playing well and the Caps are winning in front of him, then why wouldn't you keep starting him, right? And I like Vanecek a lot. Love him, actually. And I especially loved his little kiss of the post during Sunday's game. after Taylor Hall rang iron on a third period penalty shot. I do that all the time when I'm playing as well. You've got to give it a little love after it makes a save for you, and you can't take yourself too seriously as well. Hockey's meant to be fun, and Vanecek is having fun out there, and as a result, the Caps are having a lot of fun in the standings. So, speaking of the penalty shot as well, because we have to talk about this, it was, like I said, during the third period, it was a tie game at the time, and it should not have been a penalty shot, quite frankly. And this is really just but one in a long line of gripes that Caps fans should be having with the officiating thus far this season, as when we look at the special teams numbers, and please, try not to vomit as I give you these numbers here, but the Caps have had the power play only 12 times through 6 games. So they are averaging just 2 power plays per game, which is frankly pretty suspicious, given that the Caps usually have the puck for the majority of each game, and more puck possession typically equals more power plays. Everybody knows that. But whatever, the point is they're not getting power plays, and on the flip side, they're being whistled for a ton of penalties themselves. Obviously, some of that is their fault. Some of it is them not being careful enough with their sticks and things like that, but some of it is the refs, right? And they've been shorthanded 23 times already, and as I mentioned, have had a penalty shot against them already as well. So overall, it's not ideal, and it's likely not going to get any better either, as due to the pandemic situation, we are going to see the same referees over and over and over again all season long, as the NHL understandably tries to limit the travel. So I'm not very optimistic about these power play and penalty kill discrepancies being sorted out anytime soon. The power play, thankfully, has been good the rare times that it's been allowed on the ice, going 4 for 12 so far, or 33.33%. But honestly, it's been pretty amazing, and I've been pretty impressed that the Caps have been able to propel themselves to 4th in the league in scoring, even with the severe lack of power plays coming their way, and even with so many of their big scorers being out of the lineup. So I can't wait to see what they do once everyone's back in the lineup and the usual suspects really get on a roll. But yeah, 2 power plays per game so far, by far the worst rate in the league as well. So what can you say? Get it together, Stripes. Anyways, on to some other happenings from elsewhere in the league. So the big news over the weekend, Patrik Laine being traded by the Winnipeg Jets in exchange for Pierre-Luc Dubois from the Columbus Blue Jackets. So the full details of the trade, the Blue Jackets, they get Laine and forward Jack Roslovic. The Jets, in exchange, they get Dubois and a 3rd-round pick in 2022. So, Patrik Laine, Pierre-Luc Dubois, they're 2 very different players, 2 very good players, but 2 very different players. Roslovic, by the way, is a very good player as well. He's just 23 years old. He was a 1st-round draft pick in 2015, and he scored 12 goals and put up 29 points in 71 games last season. So he's a good player as well. That's not to be taken lightly, him being a part of that deal. So obviously, when you look at it, the Blue Jackets, right off the bat, your first impression, obviously the Blue Jackets got a lot more offense back in this trade, right? They get Patrik Laine, they get Roslovic as well. But, Pierre-Luc Dubois, when you look at this trade, Pierre-Luc Dubois, he's also going to Winnipeg. He's also going to be playing with much better players around him now in Winnipeg than what he had in Columbus, whereas Laine, in contrast, he's not going to have the same level of offensive help around him in Columbus that he had in Winnipeg. So maybe Laine, maybe he took that for granted a little bit in Winnipeg. But, I think for Patrik Laine, obviously in this trade, Patrik Laine is the better goal scorer. That's undisputed. Pierre-Luc Dubois, obviously, I believe, is the better all-around player, the better well-rounded player. He's a much better two-way forward than Laine is. But Laine, obviously, the better goal scorer. And, I've always said And I always will say, if there's one thing that you cannot teach guys to do, it's how to score goals, right? Goals are at such a premium. It's the most important skill that you can have. It's the hardest thing to find in a player. So Winnipeg, taking a big risk, trading Patrik Laine. But I do think that it's not going to be as lopsided as some people are thinking that it's going to be, just for the fact that Laine going to Columbus, he's not going to have that same level, like I said, of offensive help around him in Columbus that he had in Winnipeg. And being coached by John Tortorella as well. I do think that, for those two reasons, for the players around him, and for his new coach in John Tortorella, I do think that Patrik Laine's numbers are going to drop some. His production's going to drop off. So, for Tortorella, Patrik Laine working under John Tortorella, I think it's going to be a combination of a couple of things. I think, first of all, Tortorella's coaching style, he's defense first, really. And then just the fact that, I don't think those two are going to be getting along very well, quite frankly. There will probably be quite a few times where Laine's ice time is cut. So, for those reasons, I think that we will see Patrik Laine's production drop. And then on the flip side, for Pierre-Luc Dubois, he goes to Winnipeg. He's going to have much better players around him now, at least much better offensive players around him now than what he had in Columbus. So I do think that on the flip side, we will see Dubois' offensive numbers climb some. Winnipeg as well. Obviously, they play a more up-tempo offensive style than what they play in Columbus. So I do think that we're going to see Dubois' offensive numbers climb up, whereas Laine's offensive numbers will dip down a little bit. So for that reason, I don't think that it's going to be quite as lopsided, at least, on the surface level as people think that it's going to be. But like I said, obviously Patrik Laine is the better goal scorer. And I think that Winnipeg is taking a big risk by trading him. It could work out though for both teams. It's kind of one of those trades that you look at it and you're like, it helps both teams. It kind of gives them both what they needed. Winnipeg, center ice position now. Wow. They're really good down the middle now. And then for Columbus, obviously, they needed a goal scorer. They don't have anybody in that city that can score goals. So, they really needed to get a guy like Patrik Laine, and it's almost never that these guys become available. So good on them to get him. And then, like I said, Jack Roslovic, he's not nothing in this deal. He's a good player as well. So, as for who really wins this trade, we can't say yet. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of it will come down to not just how these players perform this season, but a lot of it, maybe most of it, will come down to which of these two teams can actually keep the star player that they just traded for, if either of them can. Pierre-Luc Dubois, he's only on a 2-year contract, and Patrik Laine, he only has this season before he needs a new contract again. So it's rather hilarious, really, that both of those guys wanted out of those respective cities, and yet Laine, who wanted out of Winnipeg, he ends up getting traded to the Winnipeg of America, while Dubois, he wanted out of Columbus, and he ends up getting traded to the Columbus of Canada. So the irony there is almost too much. But at least the Blue Jackets, they were able to sign Roslovic already to a 2-year contract right after the trade. So, at least they have that going for them. Roslovic is a Columbus native, for what it's worth. So maybe he doesn't share the same general disdain for that city as most players do. And then around the rest of the league as well, there was just a couple of other things. Matthew Tkachuk versus the Toronto Maple Leafs. Don't know if you guys saw this. Tkachuk, so Flames, Leafs, the North Division, Canadian Division, whatever you want to call it. It's been crazy so far. I obviously live in Canada, so I see a lot of these games. Flames versus Leafs. Matthew Tkachuk, I want to say landed on Leafs goaltender Jack Campbell, kind of accidentally on purpose. So I just want to say first, like, I love Matthew Tkachuk. He's like a mini Tom Wilson in terms of being that rare power forward type. He combines the physicality and the agitating part of the game with top six scoring talent, right? Maybe the biggest way that he differs from Tom Wilson is that Tom Wilson will both start and finish the fight. Like, he'll knock you the fuck out. Tkachuk doesn't have the same fists of fury that Wilson does, and he's not as big or as powerful as Tom Wilson. But then few, if any, are. So still, I love Tkachuk. That being said, anytime that someone lands on top of your goalie, they should be getting their ass kicked right away, right? The problem is the Toronto Maple Leafs do not have anyone capable of providing a beatdown. They're built like a figure skating team. And please don't talk to me as if Wayne Simmonds is a tough guy. Like, he might be the toughest guy on the Toronto Maple Leafs, but that says a lot more about the Leafs than it does about Wayne Simmonds. He's not a tough guy. So if you go watch the replay of this, like I said, it was kind of accidentally on purpose, and there wasn't much of a response from the Leafs. Tkachuk, he didn't really have to pay a price for it. There's not really anyone on that Leafs team that's going to take him on. So it's just kind of something to keep an eye on. They do play again in short order here, and obviously they play each other like 10 times this season. So that one could get ugly. And staying in the North Division as well, just how bad. You guys know I'm from Vancouver. Just how bad are the Vancouver Canucks? Have you been watching these guys at all? You probably have. If you're a Caps fan and you wanted to keep an eye on former Caps Braden Holtby, Jay Beagle, Nate Schmidt as well, just to kind of check in and see how they look. Well, they have not looked good. Jay Beagle, obviously, he's been coming down the back nine of his career. We knew this already. He's no longer the same player that he was for our Caps. Nate Schmidt, who is a good player, has looked bad in Vancouver because Vancouver is bad. And poor Braden Holtby, who is currently playing behind what is by far the league's worst defense. The Canucks are 31st out of 31 teams in both expected goals against and in actual goals against. Which means essentially that their defense was expected to be bad, and it is fully living up to the hype. So they're giving out both scoring chances and goals as if they're candy on Halloween. And for what it's worth, the Canucks were also in the bottom of the league in expected goals against last season as well. But it was mitigated quite a bit by Jacob Markstrom being far and away their most valuable player. So naturally, the only logical thing to do with your MVP was to let him walk as a free agent to a division rival. Makes perfect sense. Markstrom, by the way, he beat the Canucks in both of his Flames games against them so far this season. He earned a shutout in the first one, and he gave up just 2 goals in the next one. So he has stopped 57 of 59 Canucks shots so far this season, and has a 1.00 goals against average in 2 games against them. So yeah, that offseason decision is working out great for Jim Benning. As is the decision to let Tyler Toffoli walk, also to a division rival, as Toffoli just finished scoring 5 goals and 7 points in his first 3 games against the Canucks this season, including a hat trick in their first meeting, because why not? The Habs are in first place in the North Division with an 83.3 winning percentage, while the Canucks are in 6th place in that same division with a 28.6 winning percentage and a league worst minus 13 goal differential. That's great if you're playing golf, not so great if you're playing hockey. The next worst team is the Detroit Red Wings at -8. So the Canucks are almost twice as bad as the next worst team. I feel for guys like Braden Holtby and Jay Beagle, I really do. But hey, you'll always have 2018, you magnificent champions. We love you, always and forever. Forever Capitals, forever winners. Try not to forget it as your Canucks stink up the league. And speaking of which, the Canucks, just a final note here, because a lot of people talk about this guy. Quinn Hughes has got to be the absolute worst defenseman when it comes to actually playing defense in the entire league. Maybe in the world, honestly. Seriously, I watch a lot of Canucks games, like I said, since I live in Vancouver. And I know Canucks fans like to point out that he puts up points, most of which come via the power play, which is usually not a lot of help come playoff time, but whatever. But seriously, at what point is the offense not worth sacrificing the defense? Well, I'll tell you at what point. He's -7 in 7 games this season. He's -17 over 80 games, which is basically one full season in his career. So every time I watch them play, like, he's out there on the ice every single time that the Canucks get scored on, which is a lot, like we mentioned. And he is almost always the guy who fucked up to make the goal happen. So, like, he's a fucking train wreck out there. All I'm saying is, because this was a debate last season, like, give me Cale Makar 100 times out of 100 over that guy. Anyways, rant finished. So yeah, that pretty much catches you up for the news from around the league. So once again, thank you all so much for listening today. We love having you here. We love talking hockey with you all. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast if you haven't already. It is available on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, on iHeartRadio, on Stitcher, on TuneIn, on Podcast Addict. So pretty much anywhere and everywhere that you would get your podcast from, we are on there. So subscribe, share us with your family and your friends and your fellow Caps fans, your fellow hockey fans in general. And hey, leave us a review if you feel so inclined as well. We always love reading the reviews, unless, of course, it's a negative review, in which case we don't want to hear it, and fuck you. No, I'm just kidding. We do enjoy reading all of the reviews. A little, constructive criticism never hurt anyone. So, anyways, Caps' next game is Tuesday against Barry Trotz's Islanders. We still love you, Barry. So as always, Caps fans, everyone else out there, babes, stay classy, stay healthy, stay safe, and we will chat with you soon. And of course, let's go Caps.